Everybody ready? We'll call the meeting to order. Wednesday, May 24th at 7 o'clock. With the agenda, I'd like the agenda to be approved. Has everybody seen it? Get a motion to approve it.
So moved.
Second. Is there anything to be added to the agenda?
I need to amend the agenda to add at the end an executive session for 1 VSA Section 313B, labor relation agreements with employees. And we may have to come out and take action after, but, I mean,
Move the amendment.
Get a second, we move.
Second?
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any public comments? None heard. We got a presentation for Act 77, Donna and Laura. Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. We just have a short presentation for you. I know you have quite a full agenda, but this will be an ongoing topic of discussion and information for you because it involves rather major changes to how we instruct our students and how we assess them and how we move forward with grading according to proficiency standards. So the subject is really about Vermont Act 77 that outlines the Vermont Educational Quality Standards for us. And this is an SVSU update for you. Laura Boudreau has been doing massive work with all of our teachers in every school. This especially affects our middle school and high school, but we also have been looking at our proficiency standards in the elementary grades and adjusting those report cards to also meet those standards. So tonight we have a very special guest to help explain some of that to you, and I will let Laura introduce everyone.
Hi, I'm Laura Boudreau. I'm the Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment, and thank you for having us. So the handout I just gave you summarizes the three big focus areas from Act 77 that's outlined in the Vermont Educational Quality Standards. Personalized learning plans is a requirement that every student in grades 7 through 12 needs to have a personalized learning plan, which is a written document developed by the student and a representative of the school. And if the student is a minor, then a parent or guardian is involved. And it describes the scope and rigor of learning opportunities and support necessary to support the child in being college and career ready. We're also going to touch upon tonight flexible pathways to graduation, which is a strength of our educational system in our community. And I'll give you an update that was created by a team at the high school with representation from the community. And then we're just going to touch upon proficiency-based graduation requirements tonight. That's the work of almost all the curriculum teams in our district. But we're going to start with personalized learning plans. So I have two guests. We have Mr. Payne, the principal of Mount Anthony Middle School, and Kyle Hurley, who is a 7th grade student at Mount Anthony Middle School. Our middle school has a wonderful team of staff that have worked together to create a personalized learning plan protocol that all 6th, 7th, and 8th graders experience here. And they have been recognized not only in our community, but in the state of Vermont for their work. And we wanted to highlight that by having one of our middle school students come share their plan. So Kyle and Mr. Payne, I'm going to turn this over to the two of you.
So, first of all, I'm going to give Kyle a plug because he is with us this evening when he could be at home working on his Spanish project for Miss Austin. So hopefully Miss Austin hears that and gives him some credit for that. Even though it's due next week, he's already working on it this evening. So hopefully she gives him a few points as a bump up. As Laura talked about, the PLP, a personalized document for a kiddo who's really, as a principal's view of it, is getting kids to start thinking about where do I want to go. And in middle school, you start with who am I, what are my interests, what are my strengths, what are some short-term goals for myself. And Kyle is going to be showing us his plan this evening that he has developed himself. I want to give a really quick shout out to Chris McGuire, who is the associate principal, and a very dedicated group of teachers who have really done a majority of this work. planning with students, but also activities throughout the school year that help make this real for kids, make it meaningful for kids. And the work has been just tremendous. And as Laura said, their work is starting to be recognized. Kyle's going to talk a little bit about that as far as his travels. But let's start first with the plan. We want to show them a couple of slides. So you want to start with the interest one? You can kind of explain what they're looking at. This is a Google presentation, so it's going to be a slideshow. Kyle's going to show you a couple of slides. Kyle, why don't you go ahead and explain what you're showing them right now?
This is my interest page, like what I'm interested in and what I like really take like my time in and what I really care about. One of my interests was science. I really like science because I get to do hands-on things. It's always just like moving around, doing stuff. I'm always interested in that kind of like chemical and all that kind of stuff. It's just always interested me. My other interests are like sports. I'm really interested in the sport I'm in now, which is wrestling, which is fun. And I'm also interested in probably trying out football, so stuff like that.
So why don't you go ahead and grab that next slide. We're going to talk about the goals. You wanted to show them the goal setting.
Okay.
So again, Kyle's whole presentation is about 16 slides. It's a variety of things. What are your interests? What are you into? What's grade checks? Like what are your grades going right now? How's your MAP scores going? And so kids can set goals academically. This is a goal setting sheet that he's going to walk you through as far as a personal, short term, and then some data looking at that for. And this is definitely Kyle's interest, so I'm going to stop talking and let him talk to you about it a little bit.
So I'm obviously really into wrestling, so one of my goals this year was to become a state champion. I ended up actually accomplishing that goal this year and accomplished that not too long ago. So, and my other goals, which I've been trying to work on for the past 4 years, was to become a national champ and a New England champ, which I still have to put work into that, but I've come pretty far into the sport to get to where I am now. So, I mean, I'm kind of proud. I'm really proud of accomplishing that first goal. So, just had to place some new goals in there to try to accomplish those now. Now I was going to set those up.
Kyle's being a little bit modest right as we were practicing this afternoon. He was talking about, he can tell you exactly what he learned at New England's. Mr. Payne, match number 1, match number 2. I know what I'm going to do next year. I know how I'm going to improve that. And that's really what we're looking to encourage middle schoolers to start thinking about. These are my goals. The hope is that, and this year we do PLPs in grades 6, 7, and 8. These 8th graders will go to the high school next year. Google Doc is on the internet. Any enabled device, Kyle can pop this open, show it to a guidance counselor at the high school. This is who I am, and it helps with those conversations. And so these kids will be taking this to the high school, and hopefully what we want to see is kids having more thoughtful planning around high school experience and what's beyond high school. So school is something that they act on, and it's not something that just acts on them. You wanted to show one more slide, but you wanted to show
The career one.
the career one. That's right. Okay. We're going to show you one more slide, and then I'll have Kyle talk about a couple of activities that he participated in this school year.
So this year last year and this year we did a career fair, and we get to go around to a bunch of different booths and get to learn about different careers and what we might be interested in doing when we're old. So what I went to with the police, this Vermont State Police, and the police, what was it? I'm trying to remember this. The Bennington Police Department and the Vermont State Police Department booths, and I'm really interested in that because I was really thinking about law enforcement when I'm older, because I'm into stuff like that, and I like all that type of stuff, and into I don't really know how to describe it, but like just like the idea of being able to go out and help the community somewhat. And one of our officers that actually works here in the school, I actually went up to him and got to talk to him, Officer Lackey, and he taught me, he showed me a lot and told me a lot about it, which I was really interested in, and I might take that as a job when I'm older, so.
Officer Lackey also has a connection to Kyle. He's a product of the Mount Anthony wrestling program, so they have lots to talk about when they sit and chat. Vermont State Police, by the way, at the career fair had the coolest booth as far as giving away things, which is really the entry into any middle school's heart, you know, stickers and things like that. They love that. So we appreciate the troopers coming down to visit us. So we talk about a little bit about, this is a document, this is a very personal piece. There's one of these for every one of the 550 kids who goes to school here. What we're trying, what the team has been working on now is activities throughout the school year. Kyle talked a little bit about the career day. We also have an opportunity, a relationship with Bennington College. Bennington College students do this at the college level. They have a plan on their own as they work their way through the curriculum toward a degree. And so we wanted Kyle to talk a little bit about what it's like to work with Bennington College kids.
This year, my teacher, Miss Moriarty, which sad to say she's not here, but she actually ended up getting a bunch of the college students to come in throughout the year a lot. And we talk about like how are we going to set up our goals, how we're going to set up our plans for later on, and what we plan on doing, and like what we're interested in. And what I really liked was they would sit down and the college students would just sit there and hear you out, and they'd help you with anything you really needed, and they'd tell you their goals and how they planned, and it just gave you like momentum somewhat to like be interested in what they did somewhat. Like when they described how they did their goals, you were really interested in it, and you were like, I want to try this, I want to put my effort into this and see how my results come later on when I'm older. So
We want to, and as Kyle already did, he did a nice job thanking his teacher, Amy Moriarty, who's done so much of the work with Bennington College, also Susan Scorbati, who's with the college, and she's helped coordinate college students working with our students. The last thing I wanted Kyle to talk about, we were, as a school, we were invited to go to Montpelier and testify in front of a committee to talk about, an education committee that wanted to know an update, what's going on, what kind of work you're doing. And Kyle participated in that. So you want to talk a little bit about your trip to Montpelier?
it was really interesting actually. We actually got to go through, like, we were in the State House obviously, so I mean we went in there, and we in the small room, and they were all there, a bunch of people there, the head people, and they were like, we got to tell them about like what our goals were, and they'd ask us questions and how we planned them, and it was really, really interesting. And we actually got to go around in the building and check everything out, and they let us see all that see everything that was in there after we presented to 2 different committees actually. We're only supposed to present to 1 committee, but they ended up having us present to 2, which was really nice. So.
And part of the result from our visit to Montpelier is that we'll be visited by agency representatives next week who want to come down and see, you know, kind of a day in the life of the middle school and the work that we're doing with the PLP. So I want to thank Kyle for that. You have any questions for Kyle? Question for you.
Hi, I'm Chris Murphy. A question for you and for Mr. Payne as well. You specifically, talk about the role your parents played in developing your plan, and Mr. Payne, if you could just talk sort of in general about how parents are brought in on the process.
Absolutely.
My aunt and my uncle are really like high set. They want my goals and my grades really high. My goals usually are above an 85, so they're there. If anything's lower, I get talk about it. Yeah. So I mean, they're really high with the goals, and if I don't get grades up, my sports get pushed away until the grades go up. So they're really on me about that, and they're always like, "What'd you guys do? What'd you learn in school today, and they're like, you got any homework, you need help? They're always on me with that. Like math, my uncle's an engineer, so he's always up there. He's like, you need help with math, you need this. It was like, oh yeah, sure. And just sit there and he'll help me out when I need it. And my aunt, she helps me out with my English and stuff like that, so.
So if I'm hearing it correctly, it sounds like you're setting the specifics of your goals, but you have your aunt and your uncle there sort of to provide not only that bottom line of 85 or better, but also just to support you in meeting the goals that
Yeah.
you pick out. That's great, thank you.
A little bit, I would expand on that only in that the expectation of the legislation is that parents will be participants in that conversation. I think that that's work still ahead of us.
Okay.
We had a presentation within the last month where we had students present their PLPs and we invited parents in. I think a future goal is to give more opportunity for parents and families to come in and listen. Really, the important piece is having kids present the information, take questions and explain their thinking. That's really, the legislation encourages that, and that's going forward as a project for us, absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Payne.
All right, one other question for you, sir.
Mike Hahn, I'm kind of curious. Every time you reach a goal, is that when you update your plan, or do you have periods at certain points where you do that?
Usually after I finish my goal right away, I'm like planning on what I'm gonna do next for a goal and what I wanna accomplish, and then I'll think about it after a while. And then when we do the PLP meetings again, I'll go right in and put it down, so.
So is it part of like the classroom curriculum to have those meetings, those PLP meetings, or is that with the guidance counselor, or?
So the way, and Kyle can speak to this some more, the way we structured it at the beginning is we have an advisory block every day, so it's 20 minutes, and it is an expectation that several days of the week will be used for PLP work. A lot of the consistent piece is the grade check. So Kyle knows his grades because he's checking his grades and he knows where his progress is. But you can speak to it too, as like how often you guys work on it.
Miss Moriarty, she has us work on it more than some of the classes actually do, because she's really onto it like that. She's really like worried about like how we do, like, and she's always on us. And what I like about her is she's there to help us. She's guiding us. She's that extra teacher there, and it's not like we always have to do it, but it's like shaky somewhat.
But the other thing that we built in this year is, and it was a little bit ambitious, but we learned a lot, is once a month we do a 90-minute delay, which means students arrive at 8 o'clock, school day starts, but we don't go to class. What we do is break into our advisories. And this year what we tried to do is have one meaningful activity every month. And that was different if you were in 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade. So it might be career fair in April, but other months you might be meeting with Bennington College kids, or you might be doing an activity that helps populate your, so we learned some lessons this year, but we were carving out time.
So
And we're
we
getting
wanna-
the time signal from Ms. Boudreau, so we have to.
So we want to thank Kyle. Kyle's awesome. Thank you for coming. That was just awesome. And so it gives you just a snapshot of what the PLP work looks like at the middle school, and is also happening at the high school, as they have a team as well that are working with students. Our last two on here, flexible pathways to graduation and proficiency-based graduation requirements, we're going to hand out updates and ask to be able to come back to present to you at another time. The two handouts you're getting, the first one is about flexible pathways to graduation, and it just lets you know, it's a flyer that will be shared with parents in our community about what are the pathways for high school students to design their learning path. The other handout that you're getting is a topic that we're looking forward to coming back and talking about you in depth, is the proficiency-based graduation requirements, which means that the class of 2020 is required to graduate based on proficiency. And so we are developing a whole new system, and all the curriculum teams are doing this good work. And we look forward to presenting to you in the future, but we wanted to give you some information to start thinking about that. And the sample we gave you is a math example, and again, we'll come back and go into that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
just ask one? Just to direct at you, Kyle's a top-tier student, obviously. How is this working, or what are the difficulties you're finding out with students that aren't top-tier?
So that's a great question. It is the challenge. This is all about, personalized learning plans are all about putting a child at the center of their education. And when you do that, you build motivation. When a child feels like you're really focusing on them and finding out about who they are, then the goal is to hopefully that they're going to invest in this process. So at the middle school, I think it's events that they're creating, the experiences they create throughout the year create enthusiasm, and kids, and then that energy just feeds. So there are always going to be outliers, and we're always going to be thinking about how to engage them. That's because it's so important to engage every kid. But you have two wonderful teams at both schools that are figuring out the magic formula to make that happen. It's a great question.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to finance and operations related items. Treasurer's report. Get a motion to accept.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on it? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
There's a salary adjustment pool breakdown.
I would ask that you table that to the executive session,
Okay,
or move it to the executive session.
will do. Approval to use red dollars for expenses of Act 46.
Renee can give you the dollar amount on that. That's money that's left over from when you had a red study, and would like to be able to spend that for the Act 46 study. Renee, the exact dollar figure on that is?
Is $7,350.93.
So moved.
So we'd like action authorizing us to spend
Got
that.
a motion?
Yeah.
Second?
Second.
Second.
Can you,
Discussion?
yeah, just tell us what the money might be spent on, or definitely will be spent on?
Well, based on last night's Act 46 meeting, we're again actively trying to pursue a consultant. Our last grant that we got for the exploratory committee was $5,000, and that's pretty much gone. Renee is pursuing a $20,000 grant for the formal study committee. We don't know if we've missed the deadline now that this is the third committee, but they have promised to get back to us. The state told us they're having major computer malfunctions this week, and so they can't give us an answer. So it would be consultant and legal fees as the Act 40, the formal Act 46 study committee. We have a $25,000 budget that we voted, so this would go towards the funding of some of that, and if we are successful in getting the $20,000 grant, that would be the balance.
Can the leftover red money be used for anything the board might choose to apply it to? If we didn't use it for this, is it tied up?
I don't have that answer. What restrictions are on, I don't believe there are any restrictions on it. I don't know, Renee, if you looked into that.
It predates me, actually.
Yeah. And me.
And you.
Yeah.
But the money was intended for looking at consolidation, so I would expect that there probably might be some restrictions as to using the money for that purpose. So moving it in to cover for Act 46.
Back then it's a color, and now it's a number, so.
Okay, any other further questions on it? Ray?
That adds up to more than, if you get to 20,000, you'd have 27,000 and change, right?
Mm-hmm. Right, so.
So, as I recall, over 25, there.
It wouldn't be our intent to spend over 25. That, our budget is 25, we can only spend 25, so we would.
So we would guarantee that we're gonna have almost $3,000 left over.
Or we're gonna be
20,000 short.
20,000 short, yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, we had the motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nays? accept title funds, and to authorize supervisor union to accept grants to administer and to act as a representative of all member school districts. I need action on that
It's
one.
an action you take every year, just to continue the
So moved.
authorization.
Second.
Got a motion, got a second, any discussion on that one? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nays, none, okay. Bus contract,
Renee again?
So we put our school transportation contract out to bid earlier this year. We contacted 8 bus companies throughout the Northeast, 3 in New York, 1 in Vermont, 1 in Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, and New Jersey all had 1 each as well. When the bids were due, we only got 1. So I am here tonight with that bid for due for to provide us with bus transportation for the next 3 years, with an option to extend the contract another 2 years if the board so chooses once we get to that point. The contract amount came in about 2.5% higher, and we certainly budgeted to cover that, so we're in good shape there.
And at some point, each district will find out what their share is,
Yes.
sooner than later.
Well, yes, well, because we need to look at what we've spent, we'll look at fund balances and apply all that. Yep, it'll be part of our assessments.
Move due for.
need a motion to approve?
Move due for.
Got one, yeah, get a second?
Second.
Didn't hear you. All, any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, approval for the consent agenda.
Because it's still happening.
I move we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, got a second. Any discussion on any of the items? None heard, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Abstentions? Nays? Okay. Policies. There's 3 to be warned. 1100 fixed access policy, 4121 travel reimbursement, and 3115 prevention of conflict and interest in procurement.
Move to warrant 1100 fixed asset.
Second.
Any discussion on that one? All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Move to warrant 4121 travel reimbursement.
Second.
Any discussion on that one? All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Move to warrant 3115 prevention of conflict of interest in procurement.
Second.
Any discussion on that one? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Superintendent's report.
Before we get into the school safety plans, I have a letter I'd like to read to you concerning a donation that we received. The donation goes to the NECC program, so we're not the direct recipient of it, but we want to acknowledge it because it was a substantial donation. I'll also acknowledge it at the next Bennington School Board meeting. For those that might be confused why both. The NECC is a contracted special needs program, but it's housed in the BSD schools, so technically it's paid for by the SU, but the program is SU. So this goes to Lillian Seward. On behalf of the students, teachers, and staff of Bennington Public Schools and the Southwest Vermont Supervisory Union, it is my pleasure to thank you for your kind and generous gift of $5,000 to our district via the New England Center for Children. We are grateful for your support, and I want to take a moment to share with you some of the ways your gift will directly benefit the students with autism at the Molly Stark School. In collaboration with the board-certified behavior analysts, the teachers at the school, and some parents, they identified 2 main areas that could benefit from a donation of this magnitude. The first is the classroom itself. With your support, we have ordered beanbag chairs, bungee chairs, ball chairs, therapy balls, a small trampoline, a crash pad, and some space hopper balls. Those, I'm not too sure what those are. We were also able to purchase classroom supplies not otherwise covered in the school budget this year that will provide learning opportunities and skills and training to help meet the objectives of the students' IEPs. These items include headphones, a Zen pad, Lego kits, stationary pedals, and other imagination-building toys. Perhaps the most significant area we're able to improve through your generosity is our curriculum. Through programs and subscriptions like Kumin, Raz Kids, Brain Pop, and Circles, we have the opportunity to try new platforms and curriculum materials to establish a resource library that can be shared among all our Bennington partner classrooms. All of our students are special, of course, and your generous gift benefits our students and our teachers as they seek to provide the very best education for our students with autism. Your gift will transform the classroom at Molly Stark and enhance our resource library for years to come. Sincerely, James Colkeen. So I'll ask you to give that to Richard. It is a grant, a gift, so I'd ask if the board would make a motion to accept that.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion on that? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Nays, abstentions?
And we're doing that just to be sure, because I think fiscally it might have gone to the New England Center for Children, and so we might not have to vote, but we'll do it anyways. I'll pass around a thank you card that the students gave, and that'll be sent along with that letter, so thank you. Now on to school safety plans. One of my goals and the goal for our districts for the 2016-2017 school year is to renew and upgrade our school building safety plans. One of the things that we first noted was the lack of uniform format for the plans. I first used the resources from the finance office. I want to thank Amanda Weber for her initial work. She went to some training on this and began the plans. And then it became obvious to me that I really needed some more expert help, probably someone with law enforcement background. So I started to look around for where I would get that expert assistance, and I did remember Victor Milani from my days at the CDC, and he was next door at the high school. And let me read a little about Victor before I introduce him, and I'll tell you why, what I knew about him, not everybody else knows, and why he was the person to get this task. So Victor Milani is a law enforcement professional. Let me start this before that. Victor works as a school safety professional at MAU, but I contract with him at SVSU for our safety protocol and advisory. He also does some investigation work for us around residencies. So Victor is a law enforcement professional with 29 years of experience. He began his law enforcement career with the New York City Police Department while completing his PhD in forensic biology at New York University. He next accepted a position as deputy chief of a Massachusetts Municipal Police Department, where he served for 2 years prior to being promoted to chief, a rank he held for the next 17 years. His final years of law enforcement service was as commandant of the Western Massachusetts Police Academy at Agawam for 9 years. In this role, he was responsible for training in excess of 500 police recruits for service in police departments throughout Western Massachusetts. Throughout his career, he has taught numerous courses at both the undergraduate and graduate level at Bay Path University as a professor of criminal justice and forensic science. I hope you'll join with me in agreeing that he is certainly qualified for the task that he has done for us, and I asked him to give us a presentation tonight on this, what I consider to be very important, that particularly that our school safety plans are uniform in the same format. So in the event that we hope never happens, when outside help arrives, they know how it can react. And I'll turn it over to Victor because he's going to speak a lot more on it than I would.
Thank you so much, Mr. Colkeen. It's a pleasure to be with you, ladies and gentlemen, tonight. And it's going to be my goal in the next 15 or so minutes to give you a little update on where we are as far as developing the safety plans that Mr. Colkeen mentioned throughout the SVSU school system. I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge a couple of people, for if it was not for these people, I wouldn't be standing before you tonight to make this report. And first of all, our superintendent, who, as he mentioned, approached me and asked me if I would be willing to accept this position as the SVSU School Safety Coordinator. Mr. Culkeen has insight, not only in the mission that we have in the SVSU to provide quality education, but the fact that we've got to do this in a safe learning environment. And we have a moral, a legal obligation to make sure that we provide that safe learning environment for all our students, faculty, and staff. So I'm very happy to be here tonight, and certainly I want to give you a little bit of overview. We have some handouts that I'd like to distribute to you, and then we have a few slides to look at and hopefully explain where we are, and you can certainly have an opportunity to ask questions. So, yes, if you would, please. The first task that we really wanted to accomplish was to really develop a comprehensive school safety plan that we could use as a prototype, as a model for other schools in the SVSU district. So along with the administration of both the CDC, and certainly I'd like to acknowledge Mike Lawler, Meg Hunsinger, as far as the administrators at the CDC, who certainly supported me and helped me to develop this plan and provide information regarding the SVS Career Developmental Center, and certainly my principal, Glenda Cresto, who gave me the support and time I needed to be able to develop these plans throughout the district. So we first began by developing one for the high school. It's a 140-page document. I've been in communication with Mr. Evans, Rob Evans, who's the liaison of the Agency of Education, and he has indicated to me that it is one of the most detailed and comprehensive plans he's seen across the state. So we were pleased to hear that. Certainly, we've attended some conferences together, so again, we have a good rapport in that regard. So looking at the first slide here, we obviously have focused there on developing that plan. We have that in place. What I've been doing now is going around to the other schools in the SVSU district. I've been meeting with their safety teams, and we've been looking at the comprehensive CDC Mount Anthony Union High School plan, and we're looking at it to see what are the areas that apply to their individual schools. And the areas that don't, that we have to model a little different, then that's what we do. We sit and we go through it page by page, area by area, and we begin to format it in the needs of their respective schools. So that's where we are right now. I have to say that I applaud every principal in the SVSU district. I've received nothing but cooperation. They are certainly enthusiastic about completion of this project. The superintendent has indicated that he would like to have a comprehensive plan in place for each school by September 1st, which means that we've been working very hard over the last few months, and that work will continue throughout the summer as we meet Mr. Culkeen's deadline of having a plan in place by September 1st for each SVSU school. I want to mention that these plans are dynamic and fluid, and certainly staff changes, changes that occur as far as new threats and hazards that we have to consider. And we'll talk a little later about something called swatting that is just a new event. And certainly we have to have a protocol to be able to address that. So they're dynamic, they're fluid. We will be meeting throughout the year from now on to make sure that our plans are current and up to date. And that'll be my role to make sure that that's the case and coordinate with all of the other schools to do that. We also have designed a building safety assessment, which will take into account all school buildings within the district. I'm in the process of visiting with the principals and the safety teams to complete this. And again, in your handout, if you were to go to the last 4 pages in that handout, you'll see an example of what that assessment includes. The first part of the assessment is focusing on entryways, it's focusing on camera systems, and it's focusing on telecommunications, telephones. So this is a document that we want to have in place for each school. Again, Mr. Culkeen mentioned Amanda Weber. Her technology skills, her formatting skills are unsurpassed. And together, we've worked together very well, and I'm pleased to say that she's done a lot of work in that regard, in developing these assessments and also some of the formatting that relates to the original plan. So she's been instrumental in that. Another part of my responsibility is to attend and critique lockdowns. And a lockdown is certainly a hazard or threat that is probably one of the most feared across this country. Dealing with an active shooter, what protocol do we follow? And we want to make sure that we're on the cutting edge of having a plan in place that can address a tragic incident like that. So we've been doing that across the district. We're trying to see consistency in how we perform these lockdown activities, and that's been working very well. In addition, we talked about updating the plan semi-annually. Obviously, we have what's called a stage 3, which is a prolonged evacuation, whereby each school would go to another facility, generally another building, and faculty and staff have responsibilities in moving our students to that evacuation site. Staff changes, we have to continually update that, we have to continually evaluate. Do we want to include more roles and responsibilities as far as that evacuation is concerned? Obviously, I have to have constant communication with the Agency of Education. I mentioned collaboration with Rob Evans, who's the liaison to that. So obviously, I've been doing that, and as I say, we've received accolades in that regard. Certainly to be aware of what else is going on in the nation as far as school safety. Are there any new innovations or anything we should be considering? And certainly we look at that. In developing an emergency operation plan, what we want to do is we want to, what is the scope? What are our objectives in developing this plan? So this slide kind of gives you an overview of what we consider when we develop that plan. We know that one of the responsibilities that we have as educators, as parents, is that we have to protect those students that are entrusted to us each and every day by their parents. Many of us are parents and grandparents in this room, and we know certainly it's very important for us to know that our children and our grandchildren are receiving quality education. But maybe even more important, that the school officials that we're entrusting our students, their children to, are safe. And to the safest to the best of our ability. Certainly there are no guarantees. We can't guarantee that a threat or a hazard is not going to appear at any point in time. But again, we have to rest assured that we have some plan in place to deal with that. And we've really had some insight and looked into that and developed some protocol to deal with such a situation. So it's an awesome responsibility, and again, it's one that I take very seriously. The principals and the safety teams in the district take very seriously. So obviously, that's why we've had the diligent work that I've seen in regards to developing these plans and cooperation that I've seen. So I'm very pleased to report that. Okay, the way we learn what we should include in the plan is obviously by looking at these tragic events that have occurred across our country. Many of them active shooters, many of them involving fatalities, serious injuries. And again, we look at these, we evaluate them, we assess them, and we learn things from them. And that's how we begin to develop a plan. We look at these situations, we evaluate them, we assess them, and then we develop and design based on what we have learned. Emergency operation plan is intended to inform, instruct, and guide professionals in their roles and unique responsibilities in an emergency situation. It can also reduce the impact of an incident, and that's why it's so important to have these in place. What we want to also have is a plan that provides instructions for school personnel prior to the arrival of first responders. There's always going to be a time period where it's going to take first responders to arrive on the scene of any type of critical incident. What are we doing during that interim of time? And again, you have to fall back on the training. We've got to train our teachers. We've got to train our staff. What are we going to do until those first responders arrive on scene? So that's an important part of the plan, and that's part of all the protocols that we've developed. Also, when we developed this plan, we met with our community partners. We met with police, we met with the rescue squad, we met with the fire department, because they have to know what we're expecting of them, and they have to know what to expect of us when they arrive on scene. So what we do is we develop memorandums of understanding between these different community partners, so they understand what we're doing prior to their arrival, and then they know what they should do when they arrive on scene. So that's a critical part of any emergency operations plan. You've got to have that interaction between your first responders and your school personnel. So we're working very hard to accomplish that. Certainly there's a web of communication. We want everybody to be on board. Certainly we have to know what resources these agencies who come on scene are going to have, and that's part of the memorandums of understanding. It's part of the discussions that we have with these community partners. You know, what can we expect? What do they expect of us? It's a coordinated response between the school crisis team, first responders, and community partners. We talked about the fact that these plans are dynamic and are continuing to change. So here we are. We're in the process of developing these memorandums of understanding. These are these written agreements that I mentioned, distributed both to the community partner, the first responders, as well as the school. And again, these are the documents that formally tie us together and allow us to communicate. Now, in your handout, just a couple of things I wanted to, I don't have slides of those, but I wanted to take a look at the table of contents. And the table of contents is about the fourth page into the handout. Again, when we have an emergency situation, people are stressed, people are nervous. We want to have a document that they can go to and easily look at a table of contents and say, oh my God, if you look at that first page, here are threats and hazards. These are specific annexes that we have developed prototypes for. So if you look down the list there, hazardous material leak, gas leak, contaminated food, missing student, kidnapping, medical emergencies. We have to develop a prototype. We have to develop protocol for each of these types of incidents. What do we do before, what do we do during, and what do we do after? And the way we have evaluated these incidents is if we in our estimation think that there is a medium or high risk likelihood that any of these occur, we have to have the protocols in place. So we've looked at hundreds of different threats and hazards. If we rate it as medium or high in priority as far as being something that could happen, then we develop the protocols. So on the next page of the handout, here's one of these protocols, and it just gives you an example of what I'm talking about when we refer to threat or hazard protocol. So you see that there are certain things that are occurring here before an event. And notice that in this particular annex, we've grouped together lots of situations: blizzard, bomb threat, hurricane, ice storm, lightning, power failure. And the reason being, we can group those together because the action we're going to take is going to be similar in any of those. And it's going to constitute what we refer to as an early release. We want to get the students released from the school as quickly as possible, and then we've developed the protocol of how we do it. So that's the during section, and then you can see what would be the follow-up after the students are dismissed. Continuing to the next few pages, this again, table of contents being really important. Types of threats there. You can see drills and safety protocols. Containments. We have two types of containments. I already mentioned the lockdown. A lockdown is the type of containment that we would go into in a human adversarial situation, like an active shooter. It would require in a classroom setting that the teacher and the students go to a safe area and take refuge in that classroom. We have emergency packs in all the classrooms with floor diagrams which would designate that safe area, that refuge area in the room. Obviously, no communication, no use of cell phones, and obviously locking the door, pulling window shades, shutting the lights. This is the type of situation we would go to in that human adversarial situation. We have other types of containments. One is called a shelter in place. If, for instance, we have a report that a student is missing or has been abducted, we got to account for all persons present. Best way to do that is contain everybody in the classroom. They don't have to go into the refuge area, but they can't leave the classroom once that announcement of shelter in place is made. Might be a medical emergency. We want to keep the hallways clear. We don't want people movement in the hallways, for instance, during the change of classes, so we might call a shelter in place. Again, we have other types of situations that we drill for, certainly a fire drill, stage 1. We've all had those since we were kids. And obviously you evacuate the building, that's the first priority. Go to a safe area, make sure the building's clear, account for persons, let them back in. If it's a prolonged evacuation, longer than what it would take in a stage 1. For instance, maybe there really is a fire in the school. We know we're going to be out of the school for maybe a half hour. What we have to do is go to an area. Again, we're not going to go to an off-campus site. We're going to go to an area on campus, and in stage 2 at the high school and the CDC, we converge on the football field. We have what are called sweepers who are responsible for meeting with respective teachers, taking attendance, and then reporting back to incident command. We can contain them in that location for a prolonged period of time. If it's a situation where it's 0, if it's inclement weather, if it's snowing, if it's icy, we can't do that, then we got to go to the stage 3. That's the off-campus evacuation. That is obviously a more complicated process, but it will enable us to get the students to a safe location, and in our case with the high school and the CDC, it's the Bennington Fire Station. Again, faculty and staff assuming specific roles in that type of evacuation. So that kind of gives you an overview of where we are at this point in time. And again, as I mentioned, we're continuing to move forward, and I've assured the superintendent that I'm very confident that we will be able to meet his directive and have a plan in place for each SVSU school by September 1st. Thank you for your attention. I'm certainly willing to respond to any questions that you might have.
Questions? We thank you very much.
You must have been that thorough.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's just a quick question.
Chris has
I'm sorry for that. So you had mentioned there being essentially a committee that would be reviewing these plans on an ongoing basis. Who sits on that committee?
Again, it's up to each school. Traditionally, we have obviously administrative staff. We have, in our particular safety committee, we have clinicians, we have nursing staff, we have the director of facilities, we have security personnel. And again, we would always meet anytime there's an incident, or even the inclination that an incident might occur. We meet as a group, we discuss it, we look at protocols that are in place, and then we move forward. So again, it's really a great design because it allows input from all these professional groups. You've got your security, you've got your nursing staff, you've got your clinicians, you've got your administrators. So again, obviously we can have our individual opinions, but to hear collective opinions from all of these experts,
Sure.
we really can make the best decision by having those committees in place.
Great, thank you.
Well,
Any other questions? Thanks again.
I'll say you've just witnessed the thoroughness that Victor has attacked this, and that is the reason that I asked him to do this, so thank you. The other thing that I want to mention to you, I met with many of you when we did the individual board meetings a week ago Monday, where not one board took action on RIFs, and I thank the boards for doing that. But as you are probably well aware, we do not have a state budget, which means that we will be monitoring hiring and spending. What we did say is that we are putting a hold on hiring. I have told our hiring managers, which usually are our principals, that they can go ahead and conduct interviews so they can try and lock people in, but I will be holding nomination forms going to the boards until we have a clearer picture, and whether, and if we don't know if there will be cuts, how large they will be. So we are definitely in a holding pattern, which is uncomfortable for many of the schools, and whether we're going to need to look at some other spending and putting hold on some projects, not the bonded projects, that's a different funding source, but that's what we are monitoring. And I have told some principals that there are certain key critical positions that are very difficult to fill, that I will consider those on a case-by-case basis, but to consider then bringing that person on, we'd have to look for where the offset would be in that individual school district's budget to placehold that money till we know what those cuts would be. And anything else I need to discuss with you tonight would be in executive session.
The only thing that I have to report is that the X46 meetings have started up again. And hopefully you'll move along. The other thing is teacher negotiations and the ESP negotiations are still ongoing and keeping us all pretty busy. And that's where I'll leave it.
We have another negotiation session next Tuesday.
Yep. Okay, with that, I'll take a motion to go into executive session.
So moved.
Second.
We may reconvene, we will reconvene, but we may need to take action depending on what happens, and we might need to come out and
So you will want to...
request action. Yep.
Okay. You don't need
I'm going to ask that Frank Barnes join us for the first part.
Okay, we'll take a motion to come out of executive session.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
With no actions to be taken, I take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you all.
Thank you.